Hi, this is Petra from Petra Vintage Knitting. I hope you're going well. It's been a few weeks since I've had a chance to chat with you, and well, managed to knit a few things since then. So I like to knit vintage knitting pieces, primarily in the 1930s through to 1950s, but also I'm partial to the 1980s. I'm based in Adelaide, Australia, and once a month or so I like to share with you the different things that I've been working on, all knitting related or acquisitions that I have purchased that have been relating to vintage things. So, yes, it has been, it might have even been more than a month actually, because I was planning to record, but then I got COVID, and actually my whole family came down with COVID, and you didn't want to see me sneezing. That wouldn't be much fun. Also, during that time, I decided that, because last video I recorded, the audio was so bad. I've been testing out different microphones because we had one that was okay, but we lost the pop filter for it. And I wasn't, like, it seemed to be making a noise when it seemed to be making a bit of a popping noise, and I was wondering if it would annoy people. So I tried going back to the microphone that came with my camera last time, and my goodness, there was a horrible hissing noise the entire video, and I had to edit it out. So the audio wasn't very nice last time, because it would have made my voice sound really strange after removing all that hissing noise. So this time I've purchased this new microphone, but I didn't know how short these things are. So excuse me if it's like so zoomed up to my face, because this extension cable is so short that I'm conscious you can only see like the very top of my clothes and a lot of face. But sorry about that. I will look into getting an extension cable or something so that I don't have to be quite so close to the camera. Anywho, as you can see, I have finished a project. I have finished my Inverness top from Patterns Scottish Fair Isles. I did not follow the pattern exactly, because the original pattern had 3 colours and I only had 2 colours of yarn, which I had purchased while I was a tourist in Japan last March. And so what I did was I essentially took the pattern as written, but I subbed in one, the Fair Isle pattern that was on here, with some stranded knitting from another book called Selbu Knits. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit of that, I shared it in my last video. Alrighty, so when I left you last time, I was a bit worried about the fit of the garment, because whenever I'm knitting something and I haven't finished seaming it, it always seems to me like it's too narrow. And in this case, it was especially worrisome because there is, as well as across the top here, there's also a stranded knitting around the waist. And the stranded knitting around the waist doesn't stretch very much, so it's very form-fitting around the waist. And I was quite worried that I wouldn't be able to fit it over my rib cage, and that I would, essentially I wouldn't be able to get it on. So I purchased a zip for it just in case from Spotlight, which is our kind of box store here in Australia. But fortunately I didn't need to use it, because I ended up seaming it up anyway, and it did fit quite fine. So yeah, so I didn't end up needing to use it. I know a couple of people were like, hey, I want to see how you installed the zip. But to be honest, I was glad that I didn't need to use the zip, because I hadn't created any seam allowance for it. And it would have been a bit fiddly to try and knit something in without any seam allowance. And I've never attached a zip to any kind of knitting before, so I didn't really want to do it on the fly. That said, I do have another project coming not far away, which will require a zip, because it's Fair Isle everywhere and I've made it quite slim fitting around the waist. But in this case, I have actually created a seam allowance for where I'm going to put the zip. anyway, that's a different project. So this particular project is knit with Amarisu Parade yarn, and I will grab the code again. Alrighty, so the two colours I used were A03491-S and A07510. I'm not sure which one was the light green and which was the dark green, sorry, but those were the two colours. And I used a 2.75mm needle for the ribbing and a 3.25mm needle for the main body. It's a 4-ply yarn and knits up at 28 stitches per 10 centimetres. So something I did mention last time was I was planning to knit all of the sleeves with the lighter colour, but I ran out of yarn. And as it turns out, I've had a few compliments anyway on the way that I did it. So it certainly doesn't seem to have detracted from the finished object at all, which is nice to know, because I was a bit worried that I always end up having to alter things because of losing yarn chicken. Actually, on the topic of yarn chicken, I'm considering changing the name of this podcast, because even though I do knit vintage, something else that I tend to do is I knit everything out of stash. I never buy yarn for a project. I always have oodles of yarn that I've already purchased that I've got squirreled away, and because it takes such a long time, I mean, look, I haven't got heaps of yarn, but because it takes such a long time to knit anything that's using the fine yarn that I tend to buy, I can easily buy quite a bit more yarn than I'm going to knit up anytime soon. So my yarn cupboard is stuffed to the gills. I mean, I could maybe fit a few more skeins in. Who couldn't fit a few more skeins into their stash, right? But I've got a scrap drawer which is full, and my usual little cupboard is full, and so I almost entirely knit out of stash. And what I find is that every project seems to have some kind of story behind it or imperfection due to the fact that I'm using stash yarn and I never seem to have quite the right amount. I'm always kind of running out just a little too short, or I'm having to do something inventive with my colours in order to finish the project. It seems to be happening a lot. So I'm considering changing the name of this podcast to something to do with knitting from stash, because I think that other people who knit from stash but who aren't necessarily interested in vintage would still relate to the different experiences from knitting stash. Anyway, it's something I'll consider later. So I was really pleased that this one was a finished object. I haven't worn it too many times because we're going into winter and the yarn composition is 60% wool, 10%, no, I think, oh, goodness, hang on. Let me get it right. 60% wool, 20% cotton, 10% silk, and then 10% cellulose, which they're calling linen or flax. And because of that, I'm considering this a bit of a summer knit, really, because it's not really very warm. I mean, it's short sleeves anyway, but this yarn's quite drapey and it's not really warm. I would normally wear wool in summer anyway, just because I'm always a cold person, and in my house it gets really cold over winter, so I'm hoping to have a few more kind of wintry knits. So yes, I have started working on some things that are going to be a little bit more wintry. That said, my projects all take ages, so I don't know if I'm going to actually finish these projects in time or not, especially since I'm still working on projects that are knit in 4-ply as well. Alrighty, so let me tell you a little bit about some of my works in progress then, and I will also make sure, I might have done so already in this video or I might do so here, I will make sure to include some footage so that you can see this project properly, the finished one, because I'm conscious that I'm so close up that you can't really see anything at all. All right. Okay, so let's move on to some of the other projects I've been working on. The theme is going to be scrappy bits. This next one is absolutely infuriating me at the moment. I kind of feel like I want to get it finished, but I also feel like abandoning it for a bit because it's driving me a bit bonkers. But I think the part of me that wants to just get it done is winning, because it won't take that much longer really to finish it. So I will show you. So I have told you before, and I have many other projects with this yarn, but I have a whole lot of yarn in my scraps drawer, and this is why my scraps drawer cannot close. But I bought well over 1 kilogram of yarn 10 or more years ago. That was this beautiful yarn from Rowan, 4-ply yarn, called soft merino. It's now discontinued yarn, so I can't buy more of it. The pile of this yarn in my stash got attacked by moths, and I have since then spent some time splitting all of the balls that I had into much smaller balls, because I went to find where all the breaks were in the yarn, and I split it there and had a whole bunch of little balls. Now, as it turns out, I didn't find all of the breaks in the yarn when I first put them into little balls. I thought I did, but I didn't. And had I known that, I might have chosen to throw this yarn away. So it has been frustrating because I've been wanting to use it because I can't close my scraps drawer. But this yarn is not very fuzzy yarn, and so it doesn't hide much in the way of, you know, like if things just don't look perfect. If you have a fuzzy yarn, you can kind of hide it. If you don't have a fuzzy yarn, you can just see everything. And I have a lot of joins in this project. So anyway, you can't see the project yet. I'm not sure how much of it you'll see since we are so close up. So which way around am I holding this? So we'll do this. So essentially this particular project, it's just all using scraps from this yarn. Actually, just 1 minute, I'm going to rearrange my camera so that I can see what I'm holding up. Alrighty, so it's using needles, yarn everywhere. It's essentially using yarn that was attacked by moths. So yes, this is what it looks like. I have 4 different colours in here. So I've got the burgundy, the red, I've got a yellow and a darker yellow. The original project was supposed to have 3 colours, so it would have been a colour down the bottom and then a colour here, and then it was going to be white alternating with the same colour that was at the bottom, but I didn't have enough of this yarn, so I went with something different. Now, if you see the bottom of my project, can you see all these bits of yarn dangling out? There's a lot of joins in this because there were multiple points where I either changed ball because I had so many little balls, or I discovered partway through that I had to break the yarn and start over. What I did was I tried to just rejoin the yarn always on the seam line so it's all on either one side or the other of the garment, but there's a lot of joins in there. There was one spot where I literally ran out of yarn right at the very end, and I had to do a magic loop, not a magic loop, a magic knot, which is a type of knot that doesn't come undone. And I had to do that because it was the last row before changing colour, and I had to go and find like one of my scraps that I had broken off because it was maybe only 50 centimetres of yarn between where it had been attacked by moths, and I had to knit that just for half a row. It was so frustrating. Anyway, so I've been feeling kind of disgusted with this project and frustrated, and I've been wanting to almost bin it, but I've been persevering just because that's the way I am. And I've tried this on this morning. So I tried it on this morning and it does fit. So that's a bonus. I just need to finish the yoke up to the neckline and then do the sleeves. Now, can you think that anything might actually be simple when it comes to using scrap yarn from stash or knitting vintage projects? No, it will not be simple because there is always complications. All right, so when I tried it on this morning, what I had discovered was when I came to do the sleeves for this thing, I didn't trust the pattern as written. Well, actually, it wasn't so much that I didn't trust the pattern. It was more that I didn't trust that I had anywhere near enough yarn for the pattern because this burgundy had diminished much faster than I thought it would, given that I had to get rid of so many bits of the yarn. And so what I did was I cast on with some other scrap yarn, this grey is not going to be part of it. And I just cast on the number of stitches that goes around at the underarms. And then I knit a row, cast off for the underarms, and then attached it to the yoke as you're supposed to. So the way that the construction of this project is actually that you knit up to the underarms, you knit the sleeves, then you attach everything in the round, and then you knit the yoke on all of the stitches. So, but I didn't want to do that. I'd rather knit downwards from the underarms so that I can use every single scrap of this burgundy wool that I've got, because mine is not going to be long sleeves, it's going to be short sleeves. Actually, I should tell you what the pattern is. The pattern is the jumper on the cover from a 1934 Stitchcraft magazine. I can't remember which Stitchcraft magazine number it was, but I will make sure to include a photo. Alrighty, so essentially that would all normally work fine, but when I tried it on this morning, I discovered that the dimensions of the top of the sleeve that they have suggested that you have by the time you get to the underarms is not actually long enough to fit the armscye of this project. So if you see where that grey is, it comes up to about there, but if you see where the armscye is, that's the middle of the armscye there. So there's a good inch or so where if I seam this, it's like it doesn't fit. So I don't know if they're, maybe back when people were using this pattern, people knitted a gusset or something, but there's no mention of a gusset on the pattern that I can see. So I just don't think it fits. I do know that other people have knit this pattern though. So it may well be that I am doing something wrong, but as it is, it's relatively tight in that armscye area, and my instinct is that I just need to knit it bigger. So what I'm going to have to do is, so because I kind of provisionally cast on here, what I was planning to do was remove the provisional cast on anyway and then knit back down. But what I'm going to have to do is undo the provisional cast on, remove some knitting, cast on a bunch of stitches, a lot more stitches than I had, or pick up stitches around this armscye. Either one of those would work, and then knit down. So yeah, just requires a bit of undoing, and I haven't got really much of this yarn left at all, so yeah, I've hardly got any of it at all, honestly. So the sleeves are going to be very short. I've got that much left of the burgundy, plus a little bit that's in my scraps drawer that is attached to a UFO that we'll call a swatch. So yeah, basically I'll be undoing, so I had started a sleeve for something as a swatch a long time ago. I found out that my gauge was completely different and I just left it in that sleeve. So I've still got a tiny bit in there, but essentially that plus the cuff of a sleeve is all I've got. Fortunately, in this pattern, the actual cuff is done in the colour. So I don't need to worry about knitting a cuff in the burgundy. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess. I'm kind of, yeah, I want to get this one over and done with. And I still have half of that yarn left, obviously not in this colour, but I still have a lot of that Rowan yarn left, and I'm a bit over it. I think I'll just leave it in my scraps drawer a bit longer and hope for the best. Now, while I am recording this, my cat has pulled a small ball of scrap yarn out of my knitting basket and has dismantled this ball all over the floor in front of me the whole time that I've been talking with you. Charming, very charming. I'm always having to rescue my balls of yarn from this cat. So his favourite thing to do is to sneak up on me when I am knitting very, very slowly so that I don't notice his slow movements, put one of my balls of yarn in his mouth, and then run like the wind down the stairs with my ball of yarn, and my knitting flies out of my hands, and either that or the yarn breaks, and yeah, he ends up on the other side of the house with my knitting. So this is his favourite hobby, and he has stolen a ball of yarn, and now it is all over the living room. Anyway, yep, so either you'll see that finished or abandoned or just pause next time I record. We shall see which one it is. Okay. Now, I wasn't sure if I should talk about this one or not, but I think I will, because this one's about to get frogged. I actually haven't worked on this in ages, but I have shown it to you before, and I have decided to frog it. So I have been working on, which is the front, this one. I have been working on this kind of, sorry, I'm so close. So this is a DK weight yarn with mohair attached, and I have been resizing a vintage garment to use the DK weight yarn. As it turned out, actually, this particular one was from a Sun Glow pattern that used bulky yarn, at 16 stitches per 10 centimeters. I had 19 stitches per 10 centimeters, so I had to change the number of stitches a little bit. But something I discovered is the swatch that I did was in stockinette, whereas this particular, so this is a smocking stitch, and because of the smocking, I don't know if you can, yeah, because of the smocking, it just doesn't, my cat is trying to steal my yarn even as we speak. Hang on, I'm going to have to, oh, you're so naughty. Because there's a little bit of yarn dangling at the bottom of my project. He's literally trying to run off with it out of my hands. Anyway, so first of all, I found that this stitch pattern wasn't as stretchy as stockinette because the smocking stitches pull everything in. And, oh gosh. Ball of yarn is about to disappear. The cat will not give up. I'm going to hide it. If you hear any like crashing and things, it's the cat running away. All right. What was I saying? Yes, I was saying that the smocking stitch doesn't stretch much horizontally. So I ended up adding extra stitches over and above what I had originally planned for. So it would fit quite fine. But what I didn't like about it was I would have to kind of redesign it because, I don't know if you can see. So you need to have 7 stitches or so for the smocking to work. And it's based on a rib, and then you do kind of smocking, and the smocking kind of pulls 2 ribs together, so it's like 2 by 2 ribbing, and then you've got 6 stitches for the purls in between, and then 2 columns of knit stitches, and then the smocking creates a bar between them and pulls them together. And what I found was that if I end my side with the 2, like the column of knit stitches, I don't have anywhere to put the smocking stitch across, and so I end up with this column of knit stitches that doesn't have the smocking in it, and I don't like it because it just looks silly having one column when everything else is smocking. The next problem that I have is for some reason this has biased. So this point and that point are actually supposed to be at the same level. You can see they are not at the same level. They are on a diagonal. Why this pattern has biased is absolutely beyond me, but it has, and I don't like it. So I'm going to frog this project, and I'm going to reuse the yarn for a different project. So essentially I'm about to do it now, but I wanted to show you my problem before I started doing that because I'm going to start swatching again now. And on that, I am an admin on the Facebook group Vintage Knitting in the Modern World, and I am hosting a knit along for resizing or re-gauging your vintage patterns. And so this project was meant to be a re-gauging exercise, but I didn't know I was going to have this weird issue. But I'm going to use the same yarn to re-gauge a different vintage knit, and I am going to do that step by step in the Facebook group Vintage Knitting in the Modern World. So if you're interested in seeing step by step photos of the process of re-gauging a vintage pattern into modern yarn, such as DK, Aran weight, sport, whatever you like, then follow along in that group. You might enjoy it. Anyway, this is about to get frogged now. This is the last you're going to see of this. I will show you a picture though of what the pattern was originally going to be. I really love the pattern, and I would still like to knit that smocking stitch pattern again, but next time I'll look out for biasing earlier, and I will be cautious not to end on a like basically to make sure that I put the purl stitches always at the end and not to have the knit stitches at the end, so that I can be sure to have the smocking go all the way to the edge. Alrighty, so that one is getting frogged. I haven't mentioned the yarn actually. So I have a long avec Anna mohair. It says 72% fine kid mohair, 28% mulberry silk, 210 meters per 25 grams, and the color name is called Chatan. Chatan, yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. I am not great at French. And this one is yarn that I dyed myself. I got the Knit Picks Hawthorn in DK from I got the bare version, and then I knit it myself. So that's what I'm using as well. And I think they look lovely together. My project might end up a little bit stripy though, because I did end up with 2 different batches. I don't know if you can tell, but this one has a little bit less yellow in it and a little bit more blue in it. This one has a little bit more yellow in it. I mixed up the dye together, but when I basically mixed up the dye, split it in 2 because I had too much yarn, and then dyed the 2 separately, and then when I took them out they came out slightly different colours. So I'm probably going to have to alternate the skeins or find a way of distributing them in a way that's not too obvious. Okay, I've just moved the camera angle a little bit because I think that with my cable being so tight it's been slowly moving sideways. But I have another project that I'm working on at the moment. You can't really see it too well because it's so dark, but it's not black, it's just a dark purpley colour. I don't know, can you make that out at all? Or is it just a black blob? I don't know. Alright, so this is another vintage knitting pattern, and this one is from the 50s. It's the original pattern used DK yarn. That said, I think that my pattern, I think that this is going to come out slightly too large on me, because my knitting on DK is almost always 22 stitches per 10 centimeters, but for some reason this one came out 21 stitches per 10 centimeters. I'm not sure why, but it's a little bit larger than I was intending by, I'd say it's 2 inches wider than it was intended to be. But I think that will be fine because this one is for winter. It's going to be a cardigan, and it's essentially 4 inches of ribbing at the bottom, and then, oh, here we go, that's a better view of the colour. So it's this really nice dark purple, and then there's a textured stitch, lost it again, textured stitch pattern on there, which is essentially made up of a very simple knit and purl pattern. And then it has a beautiful deep collar that goes all the way up the neck from ribbing on the front. So I have completed the back and one of the 2 fronts, and I haven't started on the sleeves yet. And the button band and the collar is added at the end, so I haven't started on any of that. This yarn is Brush Tail Upcycled Possum Merino which is 30% possum fur, which has been recycled, and 70% merino wool. It says it's an 8-ply. It has a 22 stitches by 10 centimeter gauge, but something that I found really weird, and it might be why my gauge is off, is it actually says that 50 grams of this is 200 meters, which means that this is 400 meters for 100 grams, which is the equivalent to my 4-ply yarn. So I don't know how they've achieved that. It might be that the possum yarn is so lightweight that you just get so much meterage or yardage from a ball. I'm actually really surprised by how much is in this, and because when you price it up, it's not cheap yarn. I got it as a gift, and because my parents-in-law went to New Zealand for a holiday last year, and I said, hey, can you bring me back some possum yarn? I'd never worked with possum before, and so they gave it to me as a gift. And then I was wondering, oh, if I run out of yarn, is it going to be easy to get any more? So I looked it up, and it's about $40 Australian per ball, and it's I think it's $40 per 100 grams. I tend to think in terms of 100 grams, it's a 50 gram ball. And so it's definitely on the pricier side when it comes to purchasing yarn. The majority of yarns these days that are decent quality are going to be between 20 to 30 Australian dollars per 100 grams. Mid 30s being on the higher end, so $40 for 100 grams is definitely in that premium range. Anyway, it's a very nice yarn though, and I would definitely use it again, especially now that I know that there's so much meterage on a ball, because I'm not going to need many balls and I'm going to have leftovers. But it's got these nice tweedy flecks in it. If I do this, I don't know if you can, no, doesn't want to focus either. There we go. It's got like these tweedy flecks all the way through. But I think actually that if I knit with this again, I would use a smaller needle, because it's a little bit gappy on the 4mm needle that I used. And I'm normally someone who bang on gauge. Like when they say to use a 4mm needle for a DK and you're going to get 22, I pretty much always get 22 on 4mm needle. I've never not got 22 on the 4mm needle. So, and like, you know, similar with 4-ply, it says, oh, it's going to be 28 stitches per 10 centimeters with a 3.25mm. And I use a 3.25mm, and I'm pretty much always on what the ball band says. But moving forward, if I was to use this again, I would go down a needle size because it's a little bit gappy. Alrighty. Oh, I think I didn't say the colour name. It's called Firefly. Firefly, yep. So it's essentially just a dark purple burgundy. I really like burgundies and reds and greys for the most part, and kind of autumny colours like oranges and mustards. Alrighty. Oh, and green. There's a lot of colours I like. But generally, yeah, I like things that look like autumn colours or greens or grey. Cool. So those are the main things that I've been working on. I've got other things that are in progress that I have worked on, but I think I'll keep it at that, and you can see them some other time, because otherwise I end up just pulling out too many whips. Now, one issue I have been running into recently, which isn't so much about playing yarn chicken or any problems with the projects themselves, but I don't know, I think I've been feeling a little bit of knitting fatigue recently. I think it's because, and so the reason why I've been knitting some of these projects in DK is I just wanted to knit something that was going to knit up a bit faster. I'm considering changing things up and knitting some smaller projects. I tend to knit garments, and because I tend to knit garments on 4-ply yarn, for me it's, like on a 4-ply, it's 240 stitches around, but I'm also working on a German pattern that uses a smaller needle, and that one's 262 stitches around. And going around and around and around and around, or just back and forth on that many stitches, it does get a bit tiresome after a while. It started to kind of sap the enjoyment out of knitting for me a little bit, because I'm finding it a little bit tedious lately. So I have been considering that I will mix things up and knit some totally different projects. I might even knit some things that are not vintage, but we'll see, because I do really like, what I really like about vintage is I like the fit of vintage clothing. But when it comes to accessories, I don't really care. It's not like, well, I guess I could have a vintage style hat, but what I have been thinking I need is some fingerless gloves, because I lost my fingerless gloves. I don't tend to wear hats very often. I don't know about anyone other than me. I don't know if this is just a weird thing, but I find that when I wear a hat, after an hour or so, my scalp starts to hurt. And then if I keep wearing the hat, it's just very uncomfortable, and I end up having to take the hat off. It's like just my hair hurts. Is that weird? I don't know why. I don't know why it is. But it's like my hair's like all kind of pressed down against my scalp, and then it starts to just get painful. So I don't really wear hats. And to be honest, the Australian weather isn't really one where I feel like I need a hat, but I do feel like I need to have warm tops, because I work indoors and we don't have good heating in our house, and I'm always cold. And also we walk to school, I walk the kids to school, so I'll be walking in 5 degrees Celsius weather in the morning. What's that in Fahrenheit? Let me see. -41 Fahrenheit. That's pretty much as cold as it gets where I live in Adelaide. But for that, I like to be wearing a nice warm jumper. And most of what I knit has been in 4-ply, which is great for summer, but not so great for winter. So I do want to knit up some warmer things, and I still want to use vintage patterns for that, though I just want to resize them. But yes, I have actually lost my fingerless gloves, and I only had one pair. So definitely they're going to be on the cards for soon. And I'm hoping that by knitting some smaller things or some things on larger yarn, that my enjoyment for knitting will come back a bit more, because I don't know, I've just been feeling a little bit frustrated. And then my next project, when it ends up being another 4-ply, won't be feeling so onerous. Because I certainly don't want to be coming in saying, oh, I finally got through this project. I want to be like, yay, I really enjoyed it, and I'm starting on the next one. So yeah, that's kind of where I've been at recently. Tell me, what would you think of me changing my podcast title to be more about using stash yarn rather than so much being about vintage? Like I said, I knit everything out of stash yarn. I don't even remember if I ever purchased wool for a project. So I do run into odd situations with yarn being discontinued or not being able to get it again, and having to kind of fit projects to my yarn rather than the other way around. And yeah, I'm interested to know what you think, whether you think it's more relevant to be having the title of this podcast be about the vintage or about the type of yarn I'm using. Alrighty. Well, really nice to catch up with you guys again. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your week, and catch you next month. Bye. Oh, actually, you know, if I'm going to be on YouTube, I should probably say the whole thing about if you like this video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe and all of that. I often forget to do that because it's not a commercial channel and I'm not really trying to get lots of subscribers. But it is helpful because if there are people out there that are looking for things about vintage knitting, I'm not even going to come up on their radar if no one likes or subscribes to the channel, because Google will just won't show this channel to anybody. So please hit that like button and the subscribe, and then that way people can find the channel that are looking out for it. Alrighty, bye.